Imagine stepping onto a plane with dreams in your eyes, your passport in your hand, and your destination ahead of you, only to have the very thing that proves your identity torn to pieces by someone who was supposed to serve and protect you during your journey. This story will leave you speechless, angry, and maybe even in tears, but it will also remind you of the power of justice when courage meets truth. If you are watching this right now, don't just scroll away. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we bring you stories the mainstream doesn't want to highlight, stories that expose hidden injustice and celebrate resilience. Let's dive in. It was supposed to be the happiest day for Amara, a young black woman in her late 20s who had worked tirelessly for years as a rising entrepreneur in Atlanta. After months of long nights, missed family, dinners, and sacrifices that few could ever imagine, she finally had an opportunity to meet with European investors in London to expand her business. She walked into the bustling airport with her best suit neatly pressed, her natural curls framed elegantly, and her brand-new leather briefcase carrying documents that represented years of ambition. Her heart beat with anticipation as she moved toward the gate, thinking only about the future she had worked so hard to build. Everything seemed normal until she approached the boarding desk, where a flight attendant named Karen, a woman with icy blonde hair and a reputation among her colleagues for her condescending tone, stood with a forced smile. At first glance, there was nothing unusual, but Amara would later recall the way Karen's eyes narrowed as soon as she saw her. Boarding began, passengers filed into the plane, and when it was Amara's turn, she handed over her boarding pass and passport with her usual calm confidence. That's when things began to twist. Karen flipped through the passport, holding it longer than necessary, squinting at Amara as if trying to detect something suspicious. "This doesn't look right," Karen muttered just loud enough for people nearby to hear. A murmur spread among the line of passengers. Amara's chest tightened, but she spoke politely. "Ma'am, that's a valid U.S. passport. Please check again." Instead of scanning it like she was supposed to, Karen set the passport aside and called over another attendant. The second attendant glanced at it quickly and shrugged, clearly seeing nothing wrong, but Karen wouldn't let it go. With a huff, she muttered under her breath, "Some people will try anything." Amara felt her cheeks burn, humiliation mixing with anger, but she kept her composure. She had dealt with microaggressions before, but what happened next shattered every limit of decency. Karen suddenly grabbed the passport and, in one shocking motion, tore several pages apart right there at the boarding gate. Gasps filled the air. A man in line pulled out his phone to record. Amara froze, staring at the shredded pieces in horror, as if her entire identity had been ripped apart with those pages. "What are you doing? That's my passport!" she shouted, her voice trembling. Karen crossed her arms and smirked. Well, if it was real, it wouldn't matter, would it? The gate area went silent except for whispers of disbelief. Amara's mind raced. Without her passport, she couldn't board, she couldn't travel, she couldn't meet her investors. Her entire career opportunity was dissolving before her eyes. She demanded to speak to the captain, but Karen dismissed her, saying, "The captain has better things to do than deal with this nonsense." What Karen didn't know was that the captain was not only within earshot, but also a man of principle who believed in fairness above all else. And that single call Amara made to him would change everything. Not only for her, but for Karen's entire career. The tension at the gate thickened as passengers whispered in shock, some filming, others too stunned to speak. Amara stood frozen, the shredded passport pieces still on the counter, when suddenly a firm voice cut through the noise. "What seems to be the problem here?" Everyone turned. Captain Reynolds, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and a presence that demanded respect, walked over. His sharp blue uniform contrasted with the chaos around him. Amara quickly explained, her voice trembling but steady, pointing to the torn passport. The captain's jaw tightened as he glanced between her and Karen. "Is this true?" he asked, coldly. Karen, flustered but defiant, muttered something about fraudulent documents and keeping the flight safe. But passengers immediately stepped in, confirming what they saw, how Karen ripped the passport without cause. One man held up his phone, replaying the recording. Gasps echoed as the truth became undeniable. The captain's expression hardened. This wasn't just a mistake, it was an abuse of authority. "Ground the flight," he commanded to the gate staff, stunning everyone. Karen's eyes widened. "What? You can't do that." "I can," Captain Reynolds interrupted firmly. "And I will. We will not leave until this is sorted." The crowd erupted, some angry at the delay, but many clapping in support of Amara. For the first time since her nightmare began, Amara felt the weight lift slightly. She wasn't alone. Karen's smirk was gone, replaced by panic. She had no idea that her decision to tear a black woman's passport would soon cost her not only this flight, but her entire career. As the plane remained grounded, airport security and airline supervisors arrived at the gate. Amara stood tall, refusing to let fear silence her. Passengers quickly came forward, offering their video recordings as proof of what happened. One older woman placed a hand on Amara's shoulder and said, "We all saw it, dear. She destroyed your passport for no reason." The captain handed the videos directly to the supervisors, his voice sharp with authority. "This is unacceptable, and I will not allow my crew to disgrace this airline or endanger a passenger's dignity." Karen, trembling now, tried to defend herself, insisting she was just doing her job. But the supervisors' faces told the truth. They had seen enough. The shredded passport on the desk, the testimonies, and the footage left no room for excuses. Amara's heart pounded as she watched justice slowly turn in her favor. The atmosphere shifted. What began as humiliation was becoming vindication. And Karen realized in that moment that her career was hanging by a single thread. The airline supervisors stepped aside with the captain, reviewing the evidence once more, while Karen stood pale, her hands shaking. Finally, Captain Reynolds made the decisive call, directly to airline headquarters. His words were firm, leaving no room for debate. "We cannot allow this kind of behavior on my crew. She's finished." Within minutes, the response came back clear. Karen was suspended on the spot and ordered to hand over her badge. Gasps rippled through the passengers as she stammered, "You can't do this to me!" But no one spoke in her defense. The once smirking attendant was now escorted away in shame, while Amara was taken to the airline's priority lounge, assured her documents would be replaced urgently and her business trip fully protected. Passengers applauded as she walked past, some even cheering her courage. Amara, though shaken, stood with quiet pride. She had faced humiliation and injustice, but she had not been silenced. And thanks to one captain's call, the woman who tried to tear her future apart had instead torn her own career to pieces.